Well, this morning, we're going to be finishing up my series I've been doing on transformation, living free in Christ and being changed. And I'm beginning with a sentence, and it says, "Are you a giver? Are you a giver?" Now that's one of those tough questions because no one would say no, right? I mean, it's like asking somebody, "Are you a nice person? Are you a good person? Are you a person who loves?" No one's going to say no, right? But how do you know whether or not you're a giver? How do I know whether or not I'm a giver? Well, if I ask you the question, "Are you a giver?" I'm not talking about whether or not you gave somebody a present or a gift, or you handed $5, $20 to somebody in need. A giver means does this characterize your life, your lifestyle, your personality, your approach to life? Are you someone that the orientation is more towards receiving, one, or two, more towards holding on, or three, more towards giving? You see, those are three ways that we approach life. One is with the hands out, the bib on, ready to be fed. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, "Well, I'm just not being fed." That's fine if you're a toddler, right? No, we need to be interdependent, not dependent. The second is, am I a hoarder? A hoarder, and I don't mean in the literal sense of hoarding, but it means that I'm afraid I'm going to lose what I've got. I'm afraid I'm not going to have enough. So I'm holding on. I'm clinging to what I have because I'm afraid. The opposite of that is this attitude of giving. And Jesus calls us to be givers. So are you a giver? Think about your lifestyle, yourself, your resources, your time, your energy, your finances. Are you a giver? I read some statistics this week on a blog about giving, and it said there's 247 million Christians in America, 247 million people who profess to be Christian. 99 million attend church. 1.5 million tithe. So most Christians don't give in a regular and systematic, sacrificial way to Christ. It's just not part of their lifestyle. It's not the way they live as a Christian. The site here, Kenny Jang has a site, all kinds of stuff, but he did some stats and things he pulled together on giving. He found that 37% of regular church attendees and evangelicals are people who believe the Bible, follow the Bible, believe the gospel, don't give money to church. I mean, zero. That's a scary thing. But there are people who don't give money to church at all. Nothing. I'm talking about not anything. Think about, when's the last time you gave to the church? A month? 6 months? A year? 2 years? It's true. There are people who just don't give at all. That's hard to believe, isn't it? But it's true. You think about it, like, you can't go to Starbucks without giving money, can you? You can't go to the gym without giving money. You can't get your nails done without giving money. You can't watch a movie without giving money. You can't join the Rotary without giving money. There's very little you can do in life without giving money. But for some people, they have this idea that, here I am. I'm in church. I'm ready to receive. And give nothing. Now that's a scary thing. I say it's a scary thing because God requires us to give. And to give nothing is really an act of rebellion against God. And it should be a scary thing to live a life and think, I will give nothing to God. Another step, he said tithers make up about 10 to 25% of a normal church congregation. That means that most people don't even have it in their lifestyle, in their habits, anything, to be a tither, to be a regular giver. So how do most people give? Well, I can't say every single person, but a lot of people just give sometimes. You know, they may give $20 this week. Maybe 3 or 4 months from now, they might give $100 or $200. Maybe the end of the year comes, they think about giving. It's Christmas, they may give $50. There are a lot of people like that. They give sometimes in some amount. Only 5% tithe, and 80% of Americans only give 2% of their income. Christians are giving at a 2.5% of income. That's the rate of giving. During the Great Depression, it was 3.3%. So during the worst economic times in American history, people gave more than they give today. Now, why would that be? It goes back to that consumer mentality. I'm here to receive. I got to hold on to what I've got. And there's not an understanding of the biblical teaching on giving. Not that it's never been taught, but it's not embraced. For Christian families making less than $20,000 a year, 8% of them gave at least 10% in tithing. $20,000 income, they gave $2,000 in giving. Isn't that pretty amazing? It's probably because there's a lot of people out there who learned to give when they were young. And even as they got older and they have less income, they continue to give because they're faithful. They're faithful with what they have. They trust God with what they have. For families making $75,000 plus, the church tithing figure drops to just 1%. You see, a lot of people say, well, I don't give because I can't afford to give. I just don't have enough money to give. If I could, I would. That's a lot of, you hear that a lot. Well, if I could, I would. I just can't do it. I just can't afford it. People who have less money in that $20,000 range actually give at a higher percent than people who have more money. So it's not about how much money I have, it's about something else. 17% of families in America have reduced the amount they give to their local church. 77% of those who tithe give 11% to 20% or more of their income. So tithers actually give more than 10%. They give beyond. Why? Because it's their lifestyle. That's their habit, is to be generous and to give. 7 out of 10 tithers do so based on their gross, not their net income. They give what? They give more. You say it's a giver. Now, givers are good stewards. Givers take good care of their finances and their money. So I ask you today, are you a giver? Now, why am I bringing this out today? Because this is an integral part of transformation. This is an integral part of experiencing what Jesus Christ has for us. I've been talking in this series about living free. How can I live free and experience what God has for me? Well, Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And that includes our money. It includes everything. We love God, we worship God with all that we have. So we're going to look at that this morning. And what we're looking about is how we bring everything together in harmony with Christ. It begins with a heart. Our heart must be bent and yielded and surrendered to God in faith. And then it continues as we bring our mind into unity with Christ. Our feelings and emotions, our bodies, our social life and relationships, and yes, even our money into alignment and into harmony with Jesus. And all these things come together. We experience a freedom and a power and a peace that only comes when this integration takes place. So we're going to look at that this morning. And I ask you another question, that is, why do you give? So if you're a giver, why do you give? You give because you feel guilty? Do you give because you want something? Do you give because you were told to? What's the motivation? Well, what the Bible teaches us very clearly is that the most important element of giving and worship is the motive. It's what's in the heart as we give. Or the motive why we don't give. That's what's important. So why do you give? Why do you put money in the offering plate? What's the motivation there? Is it because somebody else does? Is it because you were taught to? What's the motivation? Well, this morning I want us to see that giving is an act of worship. And this goes back to the very beginning. Even Cain and Abel came and what? They gave of their means. What? In an offering to God. And it continues throughout all of Scripture. One of the great tests of our allegiance to God and our acknowledgement of God is giving. So giving is first and foremost an act of worship. If we want to come into line with God in our giving, we have to embrace that. We have to understand that when I give, I'm worshiping God. So what does that mean? If it's worship, it means that your giving is not a charitable donation. Now, for tax purposes, it is. But to God, your giving, my giving, isn't charity. When God commands us to give, He's not saying, okay, people, I need some charity. I need some help here. Help me out. Give me some money. He's not saying that. Giving as worship is not a payment. You're not paying for something. You're not paying for a service or for something you're going to get from the church or whatever. It's not a payment. Giving as an act of worship isn't even paying for the lights or paying for salaries or paying for the building or paying for ministries. Giving as an act of worship is just that. Is God, I'm coming before you. And I want to worship you. I want to honor you. I want to give all that I have to you. And I'm doing that today in one way. By giving my tithe, by giving my offering, by giving my money to you in worship. It's an act of worship. And if we don't see giving as an act of worship, it's impossible to really give in a godly and biblical and generous way. It's an act of worship. Giving is first and foremost an act of worship. Proverbs 3:9 says, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. So the Bible teaches that in giving, we are honoring God, we're thanking God, but we're doing it what? First. And that's one of those things that I was taught, many of you are probably taught the same thing, is when you're giving, you do that first. Now, physically, it may not be the first thing. The money may go directly into your checkings account from Social Security or the paycheck or whatever, so it may go in there first, and it may be going out through bill paying things. But the idea is that of all the things I do with my money, the most important thing that I do with money is I worship God with my money. That's the first and most important. And you know what God rejected in the Old Testament? Leftovers. I heard a story about a lady that had a turkey in her freezer. It had been in the freezer for 25 years. So it says they called up Butterball Turkey and said, hey, can I eat this turkey? They said, as long as it's been at 0 degrees or lower for 25 years, it's probably safe to eat. But I can tell you this, it won't taste good. She said, okay, I'll donate it to the church. I'll tell you, the church gets a lot of leftovers. And many people think they're being very generous when they give leftovers to the church. But that's not an act of worship. An act of worship is giving what? Your first and your best to God. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Biblical giving is also an act of stewardship. Now, all that we have belongs to God, and we are stewards of His creation. Now, a steward means this. It means God owns it, but He's given it to me to manage it. All right? God owns it, but He's given it to me to manage it. To manage what? Everything I have. My body, my thoughts, my emotions, my house, my car, my job, my career, my relationships, my money. Being a steward means that God owns it, but He says, here, I'm entrusting it to you. And I want you to manage it, what? For good. For my glory. For my kingdom work. Stewardship, all that we have belongs to God. And we are stewards of His creation. The Bible says in Psalm 24:1, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell in it. That is, all the stuff is God's, and all the people belong to God. Why? Because He made it all. It's all His. But God has done this amazing thing, and He's given us stewardship. We call it in biblical terms the dominion mandate. It comes out of Genesis chapter 1 when He said, I'm going to let you rule over the earth and all the things on the earth. In the Old Testament, the temple. In the New Testament, of course, the ministry of the church. But 100% belongs to me, and I want you to use 100% of what you have as a steward of mine. Another element of biblical giving is thankfulness. When we give, we are expressing thankfulness to God. Giving is an act of generosity that comes as a result of being thankful for what God has provided. That's a tough one. You see, a lot of times we can't do that because we think, I don't have enough. God, you haven't provided me. Provided for me. You haven't taken care of me, God. I don't have enough. This week we went without air conditioning from Sunday through Saturday. And it was hot. A lot of sweating going on, a lot of heat going on. But one of the things I learned to do is that if you want to live right, you want to feel right, you want to do right, you got to change how you think about things. You really do. And I thought, most people on planet Earth don't have air conditioning. Most people throughout all of history never had air conditioning. They could be happy. They could live life. They could work. They could function. When I was a kid, we didn't have air conditioning in our schools. I lived for a year in a dorm in college with no air conditioning. Right? We can do this. It may be difficult. We can do it. So we think, I don't have enough. But we do. God is faithful. God will bring us through. God will enable us to overcome. It's hard to think that way because in a consumer culture, everything you see in the media, all the advertisements, whether it be on the internet, TV, radio, all the advertisements subliminally say, you don't have enough. You need more. You need this. You've got to have this. And we are ingrained with that to the point where we know we're supposed to be thankful, but it's really hard to be thankful. Because we've been taught in the consumer culture, I don't have enough. And it's almost impossible to get away from that unless you put your mind somewhere else. I'll walk out here, I'll get in the car, turn on the radio, and there'll be an advertisement. You'll be driving down the interstate, and there'll be a billboard. You'll turn on the TV, and there'll be a commercial. And even if it's not a commercial, it may just be a program on TV. And you think, wow, look at their house. Wow, look at their clothes. Wow, look at their car. And you think, poor me. I don't have enough. And that keeps us from worshiping God with what we have. So we've got to be thankful. The Bible says, let the people praise you, O God. Let all the peoples praise you. The earth has yielded its increase. God, our God, shall bless us. We praise God. We're thankful to God for what He has provided. And if you're thankful for what you have, you'll be able to worship God through giving. If you're thankful for what you have, you'll be a happier person. If you're thankful for what you have, you'll be more content. And you know what? If you're thankful for what you have, you'll be on the road to having more and having better with God's blessings. Another element of giving as worship is that it is proportional. Okay? So what does that mean? We give according to what we have been given. So that means we don't all give the same amount, right? Now some people might be able to give $100, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000. People give different amounts. Well, what's right? Well, Jesus told a story about this. He went down to the temple one day, and people were giving their offerings. Now, in those days, they didn't pass a plate down to pews for people to give. They just had a collection box at the temple. And so people would come up, and they'd put their money into the collection box. Now, their money wasn't paper money. Their money was coins. So they'd have someone have a bag of money, you know. So they come in there to the temple with their bag of money. They'd want this, you know. I'm bringing my offering to God. They dump it in there and clang and make all this noise. And everybody say, wow, they're giving a lot of money. And Jesus was watching them. This lady came, this was a widow came. She only had 2 mites, like just 2 coins, just almost nothing. She dropped her money and you probably couldn't even hardly hear it. And he said, do you know who gave more? He says, she gave more. Why? Proportionally, she gave more. He said she gave all that she had, and they only gave some of what they had. One way to know what we do proportionally is, well, how much do I have left over after I give? Some people can give money and it doesn't even affect them. I mean, it has no effect on their lifestyle at all. But when others give, it changes things. And we're going to look at that in just a moment. Proportional giving. We give according to what we have been given. Paul says, for they gave, speaking of the Macedonians in the New Testament, for they gave according to their means, as I can testify. For if the readiness is there, the readiness to do what? The readiness to give. If the readiness is there, it is acceptable according to what a person has, not according to what he does not have. Now, some people say, well, I can't give because I don't have any money. We all have something. We all have something to give. And you say, well, all I can give is $1. All I can give is $10. All I can give is $100. And so you say, well, I'm not going to give because I can't give very much. That's not worship. We give out of what we do have. And God will bless that because we give according to what we do have, not to what we don't have. If I say, well, I can't give as much as he can give, or I can't give as much as she can give, so therefore I'm not going to give, that means I'm not a giver. Biblical giving is also regular and systematic. Okay? That means it's a habit. It's something I set up and I do on a regular basis. It's not spontaneous. It's not like I walk into church and the preacher preaches a good sermon. They have this great prayer right before the offering, and I really get emotional because they pray and they, and some churches do that. I've been in churches where they have a sermon before the offering. And so the pastor gets up and preaches a sermon before they have the offering. It's not a long sermon, but maybe, 2-3 minutes. Why? Because they know if they preach that sermon before the offering, people will give more money. And it works. Right? It works. Or you tell people, if you give, you'll get something. If you give, we're going to give you something. We're going to give you a gift. We're going to give you a prize. Or if you give, God's going to give you this or that. They'll say, yeah, I'll give. And they'll go and maybe give $1,000 here. Maybe they haven't given a penny for the last 5 years. But they hear this, yeah, I'm going to give. Regular systematic means that I'm going to give on a regular basis. Maybe that means you give every week because you get paid every week. Maybe it means you give twice a month, once a month, or quarterly, depending on how income comes in. But I give when I receive. And as I receive, I give. That's regular, systematic giving. While there are times when we'll give spontaneously according to the Spirit's leading. That's legitimate, that's fine. Our regular tithes and offerings are a form of planned giving. So if you're going to worship God through giving, then you need to make a decision today. God, I'm going to worship you through giving. Therefore, I'm going to give to you every paycheck. I'm not going to wait for 6 months and say, oh, I haven't given you money for 6 months. Here's $100 or here's $50 that I haven't given. No, it's going to be a regular, systematic giving. Planned giving. Because it's a regular act of worship. Paul told the Corinthians this. He said, on the first day of every week, each of you, that means everyone, the rich, the poor, the middle, everyone, each of you is to put something aside and store it up. Systematic. It's a habit. It's every week. Put it aside. Now this is a special offering to take it up for the saints who were experiencing great hardship in Jerusalem. And Paul was going to come with his ministry team, and they're going to take those funds to Jerusalem to help those in need in Jerusalem. So he's saying that, he says, as he may prosper, give as you may prosper, so that there will be no collecting when I come. You see, that's the opposite of how we think. We think, oh, we need to take a love offering, right? Paul says, I don't want a love offering. All right? He says, I want you to give every single week toward this cause. And when I get there, we'll take that money and we'll go help the Christians in Jerusalem. You see, giving to God is a lifestyle. It's a part of how we live our life. Next, giving biblically is sacrificial. Now, what does that mean? That means it costs me something. If I'm giving my leftovers to God, it's not giving to God. Okay? If you think, well, hey, I got an extra $20, I got an extra $10, I think I'll give that to God, you're not giving to God. Maybe you're appeasing your conscience. Maybe you're making yourself feel better. Maybe you're making your parents happy, or the pastor happy, or whoever happy because, hey, I gave some money. But if you and I give our leftovers to God, God's not going to receive it as an act of worship. He's not. Because God doesn't take leftovers. God asks for our first. He asks for our all. He asks for our heart. Giving costs us something. Our offering is the first and best of what God has given. That means I'm willing to set aside something else, even something that I think I need, in order to give to God. King David said it this way when he went to give his offering to God at the home of Araunah the Jebusite, his land. And this land was actually the land where the temple would later be built. It says, but the king, that is David, said to Araunah, because Araunah said, King, you're going to do your offering here? Here, I'll give you the offering. That's what he said. He said, you're the king. Man, I'll give you the lamb. I'll give you the wood. I'll give you all the things you need to present your offering to God. And David said, no. He says, I will buy it from you for a price. Now, why do you say that? He says this. He says, I will not offer burnt offerings to the Lord, my God, that cost me nothing. He says, you can't give me an offering to give to God. He says, whatever I give to God as an offering is going to cost me something. Next, biblical giving is generous. Worshipful giving is generous. We give out of our love and our thankfulness to God. And because of our love for others, we have a generous heart. So it's an act of generosity. We're generous. It becomes a part of our character in us. It says in Corinthians, for they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means. Of their own accord. They weren't twisted, manipulated, forced. They wanted to give. Why? Because that was their character. That was their lifestyle. They were givers. He even says, begging us earnestly for the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints. He said, man, we want to give. We want to give something. We want to give whatever we can give to be a part of this. And then the last thing I want to show you this morning is that giving is an act of trusting God. When we give, we are demonstrating that God is our provider, and we trust in Him to meet our needs. Now, this message today is not a fundraising message. If I was doing a fundraising message, I'd be showing you pictures of all these beautiful things you can have and experience in the church and all kinds of ministries and those things. I'd be telling you, hey, you give $10, you'll get $100. I've been doing all those kinds of things. What I'm teaching you today is about biblical giving and how giving can be an act of worship. And that means that when I give, I'm trusting God. So God, I am giving this to you for one reason and one reason only, because I trust you, I depend upon you, I love you, and I want to worship you. And I believe, God, you're going to take care of me because I am giving to you. The Bible says God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work. God will take care of you. So what do I need to do? Well, Jesus made it very simple. He says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. How do I do that? By bringing everything together under Christ. My life, my body, my mind, my emotions, my relationships, my career, my finances. Say, God, I put all of this under you, and I want to serve you with all that I am. And I know, God, you are going to take care of me, and I'll be a part of what you're doing. One last question, how much should I give? We're not going to cover that today, but I'll send some stuff out this week on email and online about the question, how much should I give? Today I just want us to focus on this giving as an act of worship. So I want to encourage you to do this today. When's the last time you gave a tithe or an offering? Can you remember? If not, say, I'm going to give. I'm going to give next week. I'm going to give this week. How do you give? Do you give sometimes, occasionally, or do you give regularly? It's better to give a little on a regular basis than to give nothing. Or every once in a while think, well, hey, I got some money I can give. Why? Because if you do it regularly, it's a regular act of worship. It's a lifestyle of giving. And then what's my motive for giving? Is to worship God. I give because I trust God. I love God. I give because I want to thank God. I give because I want God to take what I have and use it to bless others, to make a difference in this world. I give because I'm expressing my dependence upon Him, and I want to be a good steward of what He's given to me. I want to tell you, giving is not a burden. Find somebody who's a tither. Find somebody who gives like this. You'll find somebody who knows the blessings of giving and knows it makes a difference in life, and that God is blessing them and God is using them and God is taking care of them. Trust God. Let's worship God.